biblical modesty. Let the redeemed of the Lord dress so. What should our appearance be as Christians? What should our dress code be? What is biblical modesty? Is jewelry okay? What about head coverings? What are some of the things we need to keep in mind when dressing up as believers, both for the church and for other gatherings? And then what about a stage etiquette at the church? It seems like there are people who are going into super conservative, and then there's those who are crazy liberal. What is the healthy balance? I will share with you 4 things to keep in mind when dressing up. And I will also share our Hungry Gen's stage etiquette. I'm not saying it's a perfect one, but it's what works for us. And then at the end, share with you a little bit about jewelry and head coverings, in case some of you are wondering, should women wear head coverings today? But first of all, I want to highlight that I grew up in a very conservative environment. First 13 years of my life until I moved to the United States. In fact, it was so conservative and it was very radical. There was a very huge emphasis on behavior and on your dress code, to the point where men and women sat separately. The way we knew how somebody was not a Christian is they didn't wear head coverings, wore makeup, or jewelry. As well as, we always dressed up for church in suits, but not a tie, because you couldn't wear a tie, because a tie would mean that you pretty much are going to get choked like Judas, or like that's the rope that Judas hanged himself. That's actually was what the tie was perceived to people that would come to church. Wedding bands were not allowed, and so many other things. And there was a lot of emphasis on the external dress code, which is an extreme legalism. But I think we have right now the other extreme in the culture that I live in the United States, where there is just people just come to church wearing pajamas, and sometimes a pastor gets up on the stage and you're not sure if he's contesting in some kind of a fashion show or if he's preaching the gospel. And I think that we need to find a healthy balance, not going into legalism and also not going into the culture's kind of like whatever goes thing, and find a healthy balance. Here are some 4 things that I want to highlight about our dress code as Christians. First of all, we must understand that what you wear matters, and outward appearance is important, because the Bible says a man looks at outward appearance. God looks at the heart. Yes, you don't need to get dressed for God, but remember, you're living among men, women, children, and therefore your appearance matters, because men look at you through your appearance first. And our appearance should reflect our inner character, showing restraint and dignity. So number 1, your spiritual dress code is as important as your physical one. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 9 through 10, 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 to 4, we see that both Paul and Peter highlights the importance of godliness, good works, hidden person of the heart, the beauty of the gentle and quiet spirit, as important as your dress code. Your spiritual dress code is valuable. The Bible says to wear a garment of praise, Isaiah 61 verse 3. Put on the full armor of God, Ephesians chapter 6 verses 10 through 18. Clothe yourself with Christ, Galatians chapter 3 verse 27. Clothe yourself with compassion, Colossians chapter 3 verse 12. Our focus shouldn't be just on our physical clothing, but on our spiritual attitudes, characteristics, and defenses that believers like us adopt in our journey of faith. If you're a woman or a man, your greatest attractiveness is your character, not your costly clothing. You don't need to wear brands. You need to be branded by God. The second thing concerning our dress code is the dress attire of believers must be distinct between genders. In other words, God prohibits cross-dressing. Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 5, it says, "A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put a woman's garment. For all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God." Now, this Old Testament commandment emphasizes a clear distinction between sexes in terms of attire. Women are to dress like women. Men are to dress like men. This does not mean that a man cannot wear some article of clothing temporarily, such as wearing a woman's coat, or a woman cannot wear a man's hoodie. This does not mean that it's wrong for a woman to be bald if she loses her hair due to chemotherapy or chooses to have a shorter haircut. This is also not a commandment that a woman should not wear pants or slacks, as some have used this passage to teach. The meaning here is that this cross-dressing is done in order to deceive or to present oneself as something that he or she is not. In other words, this speaks to a woman changing her dress and appearance so as to appear to be a man, or a man changing his dress and appearance as to appear to be a woman. This is the definition of cross-dressing, and God prohibits that. And we see this today, especially in certain aspects of the alphabet community. And God does not endorse that. He prohibits that. Thirdly, we should avoid dressing up in a way that's associated with immorality. Proverbs chapter 7 verse 10, it says, "And there is a woman met him with an attire of a harlot and a crafty heart." I want you to see her dress code and her heart. And her dress code was the one of a harlot. And she also had a crafty heart, meaning the way she was dressed was associated with immorality, with lust and seduction. Now, this is not only limited to women. Men dress the same way today. For every culture, what is appropriate is different. Drawing the line between modest and immodest can be subjective, and modesty depends somewhat on cultural norms, and each believer should be discerning enough to avoid giving offense for others. And also, there's an aspect of situations. For example, what's modest on the beach is not modest in the church. Ladies dressing up inappropriately might attract you the wrong attention. Aim to attract somebody of value. Men, even if women dress in a certain way, it is our responsibility to maintain a pure heart and a mindset. When it comes to this idea of dressing in such a way that draws or portrays immorality, we have to keep a few things in mind. Our clothes were given to cover, not to reveal. Modest clothing often covers more body than the contemporary ones. This could include covering shoulders, arms, legs, and chest to varying degrees. Clothes shouldn't draw attention to or show the shape of the body. The goal is not to appear sexy. The goal is not to portray yourself as hot. Our desire is to dress modestly. Our desire is to dress beautifully. Our desire is to dress fashionably without drawing unnecessary attention or causing lust in other people through the way that we dress. I've read this story one time when a young lady arrived at the meeting wearing clothes that were quite revealing, especially revealing of her body parts and showing the shape of her body. So this is what her boss told her. He took a good look at her and made her to sit. And then he said something she never forgot her entire life. He looked at her straight in the eyes and said, "Lady, everything that God made is valuable in this world and is very well covered and hard to see, hard to find, and hard to get. Where do you find diamonds? Deep down in the ground, covered and protected. Where do you find the biggest Philippine pearls? Deep down at the bottom of an ocean, covered up and protected in a beautiful shell. Where do you find gold? Way down in the mine, covered with layers of rock. And to get them, you have to work hard and dig deep to get them, right?" He looked at her with the serious eyes and said, "Your body is sacred and unique. You are far more valuable than diamonds, pearls, and gold. And your body should be well covered too." So he added, "If you keep your treasured minerals like the diamonds and pearls and gold deeply covered, and a good mining organization with good machinery will fly down and conduct years of extensive exploration. First, they will contact your government, your family. Then they will sign professional contracts, the wedding. And then they will mine you professionally, legal marriage. But if you leave your precious minerals uncovered on the surface of the earth, you will always attract a lot of illegal miners who will come to you and mine you illegally. Everybody will pick up their crude instrument and have to dig on you just freely like that." So in conclusion, he told her, "Keep your body deeply covered so that it will invite professional miners to chase you. Let us all encourage our sisters, daughters, wives, and friends to dress well and dress modestly." This doesn't just apply to women, it also applies to men. The fourth thing about our dress code is that our dress code should reflect respectable apparel. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 9 through 10, Paul said to young men, he says, "In like manner also, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with propriety and moderation, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or costly clothing, but which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. So Paul is not putting a total ban on wearing jewelry. Paul wasn't strictly forbidding jewelry or braids. He was advising restraint in context where they symbolized excess and vanity. If you look at the jewelry usage of the Old Testament, you will see that there were three types of usage. It was a cultural accepted usage of jewelry. Secondly, a lot of times it was associated with pagan worship. That's why we see when Jacob asked for foreign gods to be removed from his camp, they actually brought also jewelry. We see when Aaron asked people to give him jewelry, he used it to create a golden calf. And sometimes these two scriptural references have been used to say that all jewelry is connected with paganism, which is not true. But Paul in here is not saying that jewelry is pagan. He's just simply saying that we shouldn't try to focus on vanity and physical appearance at the expense of what's really more important, godliness and good works. It's kind of like, think of fitness. When the Bible says that, physical exercise doesn't profit as much as the exercise in godliness, he's not saying that physical exercise is bad. He's just simply saying it's not as important as the exercise in godliness. And then Paul highlights in regards to our clothing, a respectable apparel, meaning do not dress in a way that draws inappropriate attention by either underdressing or overdressing. And then he uses the word modest. It comes from this word that means being well-ordered, decent, and of good behavior. He used another word to describe dress code, which I found it very interesting. And this word is actually self-control, which suggests soundness of mind, restraint, and discretion. So together, these three words or concepts concerning our dress code, and this could be applied to men and women, not just to women. But together, it really carries this idea that a woman's appearance should be a reflection of her inner character, showing restraint and dignity. That means Christians, and he actually highlights there, should not wear flashy stuff, expensive stuff, or revealing clothes when they gather together in the church. Why? Because our desire is not to distract others by trying to stand out. The church is not a fashion show. A church is a worship gathering of believers. You're not the main attraction. Jesus is. And if you are a pastor, or if you are a minister, whether you're a man or a woman, a worship leader, please understand, let the redeemed of the Lord dress so. God has given you clothes to cover, not to reveal. You should dress modestly, not to show off. You should dress attractively, but not to be sexy. You should dress to be fashionable, but not to be hot. You shouldn't draw attention to your curves. You should all the attention be on the Lord. Now, at Hungry Gen, for our stage etiquette, and again, some of you will criticize me for that. Some of you will say this is not high enough standard. Some of you will say the standard is legalistic, and that's fine. We can have our opinions. This etiquette doesn't mean it's the law of Moses or the law of Jesus. This is just something that our church adheres to, especially on the stage. We have three simple codes. Make sure that your appearance is appropriate to the gathering, meaning on funeral, you wear different things than you wear at the wedding. At the summer camp, you wear different things than you wear on Sunday morning. You smile and maintain eye contact with the people. So it's not just about your dress code, it's also about your attitude on the stage. And then the general dress code in our church, the third thing, includes not too short, not too baggy, not too long, not too short, not too liberal, and not too conservative. Clothing is meant to cover, not to reveal. No graphic tees that don't represent Christ as well, meaning I don't want to see a skull or I don't want to see Beyonce's face on your shirt when you get up on the stage. Men shouldn't have ear piercings on the stage. Again, we can debate that, but I believe that it's more modest to have as less metal in your body when you get up on the stage and when you minister. No nose rings, no earrings. For men, and no nose rings for women, as less as possible. Why? Because your goal is not to be attractive on the stage. Your goal is not to create attraction or distraction for what you're singing about and who you're preaching about. It's not a fashion show, and this is not a moment for you to shine. This is a moment for him to shine. Women can have earrings. And we always tell our people, when you're in doubt, go more for a classic look. And we discourage to walk on the stage without your shoes or just walk around with ripped jeans on the stage. Again, why is that? The goal is to appear more classic, to appear more modest, and actually lean more on the conservative side than on the liberal side. Why? I don't want 10 years down the road, my children, or maybe 20 years down the road, my 30 years down the road, my grandchildren, to look at that and say, what was going on with daddy? Why was he, wearing pink hair? Or like, why was all ripped, showing his chest and all of this stuff, tight pants, and, yeah, he was culturally relevant. But at the same time, you look at teachings of Billy Graham, David Wilkerson, some of these men who went before us, and you see this thing about them that's classic, that this thing about them that's modest, this thing about them that's fashionable, but not too attractive. It was their character. It was their message that was attractive. Their clothing wasn't attractive, nor was it distracting. And we should have the same about us. Now, in the conclusion, I want to share about the women head covering. The church I grew up in as a teenager actually dealt and very heavily emphasized women covering their head in church. In Corinthian church, this is when this topic was addressed. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 2 through 16. It's debated. Majority of people agree that women shouldn't wear head coverings anymore. There's still portions of Christianity that believes women should wear that. A little background. In Mediterranean, people cover their heads for the reasons like shame and mourning. Romans covered their heads for worship, but Greeks did not. Covering your head symbolized modesty, especially for married women. A Spartan believed that virgins shouldn't cover their heads if they want to find a husband, but wives should always cover their heads to remain modest because hair was tempting for men. Now, in Jewish culture, the culture Paul is from, women without head coverings were seen as disrespectful and not proper. And men with very long hair, unless they were Nazarites, were seen as lower in status because long hair meant that they were below someone in their culture. So Corinth is actually where Greek people were there, and they were influenced by Romans. So earlier, Greek women would stay at home, but when they were influenced by Romans, wealthier women would socialize more and will not cover their hair. While in worship, their rituals, men would cover their hair and women didn't necessarily. This caused tension in the church as to a woman not covering her head was seen as immodest and also sort of rebellion toward the authority set by her husband. Paul writes this instruction and pretty much says, men, keep your hair short. 1 Corinthians 11:14. Men, don't cover your head when you pray or prophesy. 1 Corinthians 11:4. He says, women, keep your hair longer than men. 1 Corinthians 11:15. And then women, cover your head when you pray or prophesy. 1 Corinthians 11:5 through 6. The issue here had to do more with covering, meaning with headship, as God the Father, he covers Christ, and Jesus submits to the Father, and man submits to Christ and woman submits to men. A lot of this had to do with covering. 1 Corinthians 11:3 actually deals with the head to every man is Christ, the head of every woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Christ is not less than the Father, being under or submitted to the Father. And the wife is not less than her husband, being covered by her husband. Covering the head of a believing Corinthian wife showed that she was under authority of her husband and therefore under submission to her God. The covering can be a piece of clothing, as Paul signified, or woman's long hair. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 14 through 15. So it seems that after all, women didn't really need to use any covering other than their long hair, worn in socially respectable style, when women were praying or prophesying in the church. Today in our Western culture, just about any hairstyle is socially acceptable. And in our culture, we no longer view woman's wearing of a head covering as a sign of submission to her husband. It's our attitude and our behavior that really portrays if a woman walks under submission to her husband, or if a husband walks under submission of Christ. And so, therefore, that's kind of a basic explanation of the head covering. What do you think about this? What is your definition of biblical modesty. What do you see happening in the body of Christ today? Do you see that we're kind of drifting a little bit more toward the liberal or ultra super conservative? Share your thoughts in the video below, and also let me know what you learned from this video. And I hope that this brought encouragement and as well as helped you to raise your standard, not to overemphasize clothes, but also to wear things in such a way that glorifies Jesus instead of draws unnecessary attention or promotes immorality in the church.